We talk about H3 platforming, Ahmed Fuad Al-Khatib. Yeah, I saw pieces of that and that was insane. That was one of the most insane things I have actually ever seen in my life. I don't even know that you can call it an interview.
So this might be the worst thing that I've seen the H3 podcast do so far, and that's obviously saying a lot. They are scamming people into donating for Palestine, except it's not actually donations for Palestine. It's not donating to like a charity like the UNRWA or the PCRF or something like that. No, it's donations for Palestine that they are soliciting, which go to a pro-Israel propaganda organization. So in that podcast episode from today, Ethan Klein had a talk with Ahmed Fouad Al-Khatib, who is like this pro-Israel Palestinian who says, you know, Palestinians are at fault for all of their own misery. Israel does nothing wrong. And he works for the Atlantic Council propaganda organization. He's basically like the one guy who these Israelis prop up as their like token, look, a Palestinian who agrees with us sort of guy. So he always does the rounds. It seems like they can't find any other. But this video isn't about that. I'll probably be covering that on my stream this week. This video is about something that's even worse than that, if you can believe it. There's a part of this stream, timestamped and called Donate to Palestine, in which Ahmed solicits donations for a project of the Atlantic Council, which is explicitly actually pro-Israel. And Ethan Klein is calling it Donate to Palestine. And Ahmed himself also tried to imply this was donations for Palestine, rather than literally just throwing your money at a fucking pro-Israel think tank / propaganda organization. So here's that segment. See, Donate to Palestine. What's he got to say? Let's check it out.
As I work at the Atlantic Council, where I am a resident senior fellow, but also I run Realign for Palestine through the Atlantic Council, and I have a we have like our own standalone website, realignforpalestine.org. There is a donate button. And yeah, so like you're certainly folks can donate there, but also I would encourage folks to consider the World Food Program has a Gaza Appeals page that is dedicated just for here, I'm going to give you the page that is dedicated.
So you can see here that Ahmed Fouad Al-Khatib recommends donating to his own personal vanity page on the Atlantic Council website before he even mentions an actual organization that does something for Palestinians, the World Food Program. He sort of phrases them like they're the same thing.
For sending food just for...
The projection is crazy, dude. Every accusation's a confession. He went on this fucking victory lap tour about how like, yeah, fucking Anissa and Ian, they're a charity that's gonna fail. I hope it fails. I hope they raise no money for kids with cancer. I hope it fails. You guys are scamming. A Creator Clash is just a slush fund. Denims is trying to scam people. Brings on the most pro-Israel guy he can find. Actually promotes a scam.
For Gaza. And they are incredibly capable.
Oh, that's great. What is that's so the world?
Yes, world I just dropped it.
So send us both links so we can put them in the description.
Okay. I sent this.
Check out Ahmed's org Realign for Palestine here. It's linked in the description. So let's go to the Realign for Palestine website. This is a website that's literally just pro-Israel talking points, anti-Palestinian talking points, set up to like masquerade as a pro-Palestinian website. And front and center, you go here, donate to the movement, you click it, donate today to stand with us in building a future rooted in hope and dignity. Each contribution strengthens the movement for peace and self-determination. You know, I notice this is not tax deductible. It's not donating to a charity. It's literally just sending your money to Ahmed Fouad Al-Khatib and the Atlantic Council. And this is marked as Donate for Palestine, and it's in the description of the video. After 2 years, the stalwart pro-Palestinian Ethan Klein finally attempts to raise money
Thanks the ghost.
for Palestine, and he sends it straight to a pro-Israel think tank. And it has like this thing of like quotes from Palestinians who support it, and they're all from fucking Ahmed Fouad Al-Khatib. It's literally his personal vanity website in which he solicits donations for himself. This is disgusting. This is absolutely gross. This is foul. What more is there to say about this? This guy solicits donations for himself from people who think they are donating to Gaza. What more can you expect from a dirty, disgusting collaborator like him? And what more can you expect from Ethan Klein? By doing this, Ahmed Fouad Al-Khatib and the H3 podcast are literally stealing food from the mouths of starving Palestinian babies. And that is not an exaggeration. Fucking ghouls.
You know, the difference between my GoFundMe and Ethan Klein bringing on a fucking scammer, at least I'm honest about where the money is going to go, which I've now refunded all of it anyway, so who cares? But I was honest with where the money was going to go. I didn't suggest that it was going to go anywhere except a lawsuit. Meanwhile, Ethan Klein, again, every accusation is a confession, every single one. Happy to bring on some guy who he hasn't fact-checked any of this shit. He just brings people on, and if he likes what they say, he goes along with it. He doesn't care. He doesn't care if his audience gets scammed. Dude, I'm not sure how many of you guys saw this shit either. During Noah Samson's stream, he had on the Yemeni kid who keeps getting accused of being a Houthi terrorist without any evidence or proof of him being a Houthi terrorist. Let me just read the text out for you guys. Noah did a heart sign when asked if he supports what the Houthis are doing. This is insane. Holy shit. We are living in bizarro world. For real, for real. How is this shit career ending LMAO? I think he means how is this shit not career ending? Just reported the stream for promoting terrorism. I'm disgusted. Dude just looks evil. What the fuck? That's a knife around his neck. Like, what the fuck? This is the most, like, bitch-made thing you can say as an American, by the way. We have videos from Congress people shooting guns in their run. This is fucking crazy, by the way. Just want to say, this is way crazier than having a Yemeni kid on your stream who has a sword. The Yemeni knife is a specific type of dagger called a jambia. It's a curved double-edged dagger, often worn by men in Yemen as a symbol of manhood, social status, and honor. It's more than just a weapon. It's a significant cultural artifact with a rich history in Yemeni traditions. Yeah. This would be like going into like a Japanese temple and being like, can you believe the violence that these people have? There's a sword in here. You don't think any of these things can ever, one, be ceremonial, or two, be not explicitly violent? The moral outrage, dude, the pearl clutching at this screenshot when things like this exist.
It's that simple. Public executions for any illegal that rapes or kills an American. They don't deserve deportation. They deserve to be ended.
Can you imagine being an American, having to see shit like this on a daily basis, and then you see a sword, and you're like, oh, terrorist, 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 quick, 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 get him, he's brown, quick, quick, hello, FBI, hello, I see a terrorist on my screen. No, 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 I promise you, I already did the Family Guy test, I can tell, I already did the Family Guy test, all right? I know that he's a terrorist. Yeah, I also saw people talking about this, forging a legacy. Jambia? I think that's how you would pronounce it. For many cultures and societies around the globe, arms and armor played an important role in the battlefield, particularly as makers of social status, military rank, courage, and wealth. In Yemen, this tradition continues to prevail with a dagger known as the Jambia. In Yemeni culture, that its presence is echoed throughout the regions of the Islamic world, from Morocco to India, inspiring regional versions of this weapon. Yet, despite its iconic statics, there have been little scholarly attention paid to this. This article serves as an introduction, examining its history, enduring legacy that is both laced with challenges and controversies. And then here's what a visual indication, I guess, of what the sword looks like. LMAO, what the fuck even has his murder weapon on him? Fuck this timeline, bro. Incredible. Just incredible. Liberal Zionism has made this girly pop community turn into Gamergate style Islamophobes who think every Muslim dude is a terrorist, ready to slit your throat at a moment's notice. No one will even stop and consider how insanely racist this is. Like, I have to point the sign again. So much of this started at one of the peak forms of media illiteracy, which was Ethan Klein not understanding Hassan when he said, Islamophobia is much more acceptable in modern culture, in a modern Western culture, than anti-Semitism. Ethan Klein sees how much Noah Samson has raised for Gaza and immediately begins scheming to steal it all for himself. Even producer Dan is alarmed by the extremity of Klein's litigiousness and greed. I mean, I wouldn't even go that far. I just think it's like, it's very obvious that like Ethan Klein is a very egocentric person and egotistical person, and he just wants all the fame and glory for himself. And he doesn't like to see the people that he doesn't like or the people that he views as his enemies ever winning. He either tries to take credit for it, which is what he did with like The fundraiser stream that Hassan and Ian put together, where they raised money for cancer, where he's like, actually, all of this money was raised because of me. It's actually me. It's actually me. I'm the reason why charity's happening. Or he immediately is thinking about how, like, oh, good, you can raise all that money. Yeah, keep raising it so I can sue you. It's like, why? How do you become so narcissistic that everything is about you? Always.
A guest, let's bring him on. His name is, once again, Ahmed Fuad Al-Khatib, and I'll have him tell you about his background. But he's a peace activist, a Palestinian peace activist, someone who I've been following for a while with great admiration, because he, kind of like me, all this guy does. There he is. I'll let him speak for himself. Hello, Ahmed. How are you? Thanks for calling.
Yes, of course. Thanks.
Dude, why is it that, like, anyone that's pro-Israel just starts putting K's where there are no K's? Why is he saying Ahmed? There's no K in the name Ahmed.
I'll let him speak for himself. Hello, Ahmed. How are you? Thanks for...
Hello, Ahmed. There's no K there. It's just Ahmed or Ahmed. I don't understand. I genuinely don't understand.
calling.
Yes, of course. Thanks for having me on.
Hello.
I'm very grateful for the perspective that you've brought to this from the very beginning, because I think I'm like you. I'm someone who's in favor of peace, who's in favor.
Why does it actually look like a Hamas flag in the background? Dude, actually, it just reminded me of a really funny clip that I don't think I showed you guys. It has to be like top 10 clips I've seen.
Hey,
Hard.
there's chat in emoji mode, but they're still able to convey.
Hard.
There's Hamas. What the fuck? There's Hamas. Oh, sorry. No, that's the flag. My bad.
That put the toll at 100,000 or more.
This is up there with the clip of like someone saying Ila's like an ugly, dumb bitch or something like that. And he says, that's anti-Semitic. And Dan's like, what? And he's like, oh, sorry. No, it's not. No, it's not. Sorry. I thought they were saying because she was Jewish.
Favor of Palestinian liberation, who hates Hamas, right? But also doesn't think that like it's a good idea to erase it. You know, the genocidal language that they deploy, that the co-signing the violence that you're seeing now, and it's like anyone who's isn't black and white just gets absolutely, you know, annihilated in the court of public opinion these days. Has that been your experience?
Absolutely, man. As someone from Gaza, someone who's lost family members, someone who has actual war injuries from having grown up in the Gaza Strip, the fact that I'm able to, and people talk about nuance, but no one actually walks the talk. No one actually understands what nuance means. No one wants to hold multiple truths. No one wants to talk about the fact that you can be pro the Palestinian people's just and urgent aspirations, while also rejecting an Islamist death cult that has been a complete
You know, we're off to a good start when we're talking about Islamist death cults.
disaster for the Palestinian people, far more than it has been a deadly menace for the Israelis. Yes, of course, it has been for Israelis in the 1990s during the Oslo process, in the 2000s with the Second Intifada, certainly with the rockets when they took over, and then October 7th. But I would argue that Hamas has been a far more menacing threat to the very existence and welfare of the Palestinian people. And trying to hold those multiple truths immediately erases my heritage, my pride of my Palestinian background. I'm a spy, I'm a Zionist, I'm a traitor, I'm a sellout, I'm a bootlicker, I'm all of those things. And I've appreciated the fact that you, among other allies across both the Jewish community and non-Jewish community, have really been seeking to...
Gotta go back.
I'm a spy, I'm a Zionist, I'm a traitor, I'm a sellout, I'm a
This is a good time to bring this back.
Criticizing me is that I'm crashing out, I'm losing my mind, I'm crazy, I'm schizo-posting, whatever, yada yada yada. The problem is that I'm crazy.
Right.
I'm crashing out, I'm crashing out, I'm crazy, I'm schizo-posting, I'm schizo-posting.
It's also indoctrinated a lot of people into thinking that this is an okay way to behave.
Different perspectives.
Period. I'm crashing out, I'm losing my mind, I'm crazy, I'm schizo-posting.
Right.
The art writes itself. Beautiful. Oh my goodness.
And I've appreciated the fact that you, among other allies across both the Jewish community and non-Jewish community, have really been seeking to bolster those of us who are trying our best to be pragmatic, be moderates, be reasonable, be about our people's rights without promoting terrorism, which is very sexy nowadays among some in the circles, which is despicable.
You know, one thing that after October 7th that really shook me was...
And by the way, the evidence of supporting terrorism is always that leftists are capable of providing analysis, not justification, and saying, yeah, no shit that these people, these Palestinians, these Gazans take up arms after their home is destroyed, their schools are destroyed, their hospitals are destroyed, their family is killed, they lose limbs. Yeah, no shit. Americans fantasize about being able to kill a home robber. They have wet dreams about it. People buy like walls of guns just at the idea, just like, oh, I hope this guy comes to try and, I hope someone tries to come steal a TV so I can kill them. And the idea that what, after losing everything, you should keep being peaceful no matter what. No matter how badly you feel, you can never, ever, 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 ever be violent. And if you are ever violent in any way, shape, or form, you are a terrorist and you are terrorist scum. And it doesn't make sense why you would ever pick up a gun to fight oppressors. And you can be able to look at that analysis and say, this is why this is happening without condoning it. You can say, yeah, of course, killing civilians is unacceptable. Of course, acts of terrorism are acceptable. Of course, all of these things are true. But you are not going to fix the issue. And you're not going to stop that from happening if you aren't willing to actually look at the material conditions of these people. It's the same thing with like crime rates in America. I'm sorry, you're not going to solve armed robbery. You're not going to solve murders. You're not going to solve crime rates unless you actually look at people's material conditions and try and remedy this. Remedy the problems that they're dealing with. People in times of peace with their material conditions met generally do not commit crime. Generally. There are rare exceptions, obviously. But most people, most sane people, don't go out of their way to commit acts of violence when they have all of their material conditions met. And instead of actually looking at the material conditions, instead of actually looking and providing actual analysis to try and actually solve the conflict, it's much easier to say, brown people terrorists, they're all bad, nuke all of Gaza, who gives a fuck?
Completely unexpected was the outward support for Hamas, like immediately after. Because like I always had this understanding, like, oh, everybody knows they're like evil and they're bad guys and they're terrorists, right? But then after October 7th, I had my co-host Hassan Piker. I came on here to be like, dude, isn't this crazy? And he's unable to say a bad thing about them. The audience is in.
It's literally not true. That's literally not true. It's so stupid because like Hassan has condemned the civilian deaths on October 7th. I don't even understand like what universe we're living in.
It seems to be in full support of Hamas, and I didn't even consider that a possibility. I was like a completely reality shattering for me when I saw that, and it's continued since then. It's really something,
Well, you just hit on basically why I decided to put myself forth. I worked for an international philanthropic organization and research organization focused on Africa before October 7th for the last 8 years, and I've maintained my contact with Gaza ever since I came here, and we can get into elements of my story later. But while I've been on and off involved with what you would call the mainstream pro-Palestine movement, I had stepped away. But I was shocked myself that in the past, at least there was the pretense, and I'll be honest with you, like there was the pretense, a goodwill effort, or at least a recognition of saying, well, I'm not down with Hamas, but the blockade. Well, I'm not down with Hamas, but Israeli policies. Well, no, I'm with the Palestinian people. I don't support Hamas and there were tiers of that, right? Mm-hmm. And then on October 7th, I would say something flipped, something really shifted. But I want to share though, before October 7th, going way back, there were elements of supporters for Hamas throughout the movement, but it was generally understood.
They had to keep it low key.
Precisely, keep it low key, and they were genuinely I believed the smaller elements. So, for example, in the first war, I was, I'm 35 right now. I was 18 in 2008, 2009. I remember, and I was always, very good in like public talking, and I was always making, a compelling case for why what's happening in Gaza is unjust, etc. I remember vividly in San Francisco, a reporter asking me, well, what do you think about these rockets that Hamas is shooting? They're indiscriminate, they're terrible. And I remember answering the reporter, of course I'm against Hamas's rockets and I'm against random acts of violence. And that's not what the Palestinian people want, because Gazans don't want Hamas. And even back then, they didn't want these unmasked dudes. They just show up next to your house. They put up this launching pad, silly launching pad. They
Also, yeah, bro's 35. That's crazy. 35 going on 50. That's crazy. It's crazy. I can't wait for Ethan Klein to say that that's anti-Semitic.
shoot off the missile, and then Israeli aircraft come and just like destroy the whole area. And so that was like when I was growing up, man. But when I was growing up in Gaza, it wasn't the rockets. They used to have mortars in there, and people hated when Hamas or Islamic Jihad.
Yeah, it's gotta be terrifying when they set that up next to your house or wherever you live.
Exactly. So like it was a universally loathed thing, and people were like, so what? Like, what are you going to do? And then meanwhile, Israeli surveillance drones are overhead, the Apaches, the F-16s. So like, through my lived experience, through my contact with people in Gaza, through the understanding that since Hamas took over in 2007, they accelerated the use of civilian areas for this action. So I was able, even as an 18-year-old, to say, well, yeah, of course I'm against these rockets. And the way Israel's conducting this,
right?
And that, and yada yada. I was immediately pulled to the side. I'll never forget this by one of the organizers of the someone who was at the time working through the Answer Coalition. The Answer Coalition have been around forever, and they were like, Ahmed,
this guy gives Yeonmi Park vibes. Yeah,
that was terrible. Don't ever do that again. You always pivot away from talking about Hamas and the rockets. You always make it about Israel. I was like, okay, wait. But I did talk about Israel, but I legitimately expressed the sentiment that I know people in Gaza and Gaza, like, I talk to my friends. No, it doesn't matter. You always stay on point. Keep the focus on Israel. Hamas is irrelevant in this whole. I was like, wait, but literally the conflict is happening because Hamas started all these things. Like, come on, guys. Like,
this is basically when I paused the interview and I was like, I don't know that I can watch anymore. Like, I genuinely, I cannot understand.
100% real and true story.
And then everybody clapped. I cannot understand the universe that you live in, where you as Ethan Klein bring this guy on to make a case for Israel, and he proceeds to make the worst case possible for Israel. You bring on a guy who says that he was speaking at some event. He doesn't specify exactly what it is. He says like Answer Coalition or something like that. And then says that he criticized Israel, but he also criticized Hamas. In his criticizing of Hamas, the organizer said, don't do that. Don't criticize Hamas ever. Things that definitely happened for 600. And the organizer said Hamas is not relevant, which that part, I believe that there is something that the organizers would have said related to that. I believe that the organizers would have said something like, it doesn't matter if Hamas exists or doesn't exist. Israel will continue the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in Gaza. So long as they have U.S. support, they will continue their mission to eradicate and wipe out every Gazan. And for you to say, what do you mean Hamas is not relevant? They literally started this whole thing. Yeah, Hamas, which has only existed for a few decades, has been here since what? Somehow magically the start of the Nakba. It's been here since 1948, really? He traffics in narratives like a Zionist, but against his own fucking people. It's so crazy. There will always be Candace Owens of the world. It's profitable to be one of the few people that goes against the grain for a little bit of money to line your pockets, dude. And it's so infuriating because if you talk to Palestinians, most Palestinians, I don't want to generalize. A lot of the Palestinians that I've spoken to, they feel a strong loathing towards the Israeli government, which has been genociding their people for decades now. And they also feel frustrated with Hamas because their perspective is that Israel will be able to continue its existence or like its occupation so long as Hamas exists, and that there can't be a solution for the Palestinians, that we cannot seek a one-state solution until Palestinians are by large peaceful. That is a genuine frustration that Palestinians have. But Palestinians, at least the Palestinians I've spoken to, they have this frustration with Hamas, and they've seen the way that Hamas has treated Palestinians, and they feel a frustration about it, but they also place all of the blame on Israel. I mean, Israel funded Hamas. In an attempt to ensure that Hamas won the election, they actively participated in giving money to, I believe, was it Saudi Arabia? And then when those same buckets of money, suitcases of money, entered their way into Gaza, they turned Qatar, excuse me. They turned a blind eye. They were like, oh, well, it's such a shame that all this money we gave you guys is going straight to Hamas. Wow. I sure hope that that's like not being used to legitimize our operations in Gaza. Oh, man. Sorry, Qatar.
So that was the first crack for me. I was like, really? We're going to engage in dishonesty just to be...
There's so many good clippable moments. We're going to engage in dishonesty?
But I didn't think much of it at the time. And I was like, okay, whatever, that's one person. And I continued to seek to do this pragmatic approach of saying, look, Hamas is like bad, like Hamas is terrible. And I would get some funny looks, but for the most part, people didn't really give me a hard time or push back. But what I would say is that since October 7th, there's been a complete shift, man.
Right.
And I have a couple of theories to that. I think one of them is that, I mean, it's been...
Oh, apparently, Bana Banana did a video on this guy months ago. The trader industry.
He's more of an opportunistic social media influencer.
Final boss of respectability politics.
Tib is someone who has turned being a Palestinian, who's willing to say what Zionists want to hear, into a career as a sort of pseudo-academic in the Western think tank industrial complex and the Western media. He works for institutes and councils that exist to justify Western foreign policy positions and especially Western support for Israel. Al-Khatib is by far the most pathetic and saddest of this bunch, and that's saying quite a lot given that I just talked about John Aziz. You see, he's basically been groomed ever since he was a teenager into becoming a nice, agreeable, as a Palestinian, pro-Israel activist by the US government and US government-aligned organizations. He is from Gaza, and at the age of 15, he was chosen to take part in a US State Department program of cultural exchange. From then on, he was hooked. He soon after moved to the US and gradually built a career for himself there in precisely the role that the State Department would have liked of him. He initially founded a borderline scam.
Palestinian here, most of us... Wait, I want to read this chat message. Cheddar says, Palestinian here, most of us don't like Hamas and their way of governing, but we do recognize that Israel doesn't do what it does because of Hamas. The other thing is that all the other axes of resistance have been completely undermined. Yeah. And again, this is just like my experience talking to other Palestinians as well. They've echoed the same thing, which is there are people whose lives have been worsened by Hamas and by the act of Hamas, and they don't agree with the actions of Hamas, the governing of Hamas, etc. But at the end of the day, the reality is that Israel is the reason that Hamas is in power, and Israel is the only party here that can actually end this war.
NGO with the impossible goal of convincing the Israelis to allow Gaza to have an airport again, which was never going to happen given that the Israelis intentionally destroyed Gaza's airport themselves back in 2002. He then moved on to studying, I shit you not, 2 degrees in intelligence studies at the American Military University, something which you're obviously not going to be doing as a Palestinian unless the US military and government see you as a
I need the timestamp for him saying, I'm a traitor.
I'm a spy. I'm a Zionist. I'm a traitor. I'm a sellout. I'm a
potential asset. Soon after Al-Khatib's graduation, October 7th happened, and this opened up wonderful new opportunities for traders like himself. Like John Aziz, he quickly began writing, as a Palestinian, Israel is actually awesome type articles for outlets like The Atlantic, which...
And surely that means both sides are to blame and you can't promote and side with Hamas. The problem is that there's money to be made and there's an easy audience to garner by convincing people like you or anyone else for that matter that anyone who spends most of their time criticizing Israel must love Hamas, when in reality all of the people that criticize Israel and spend most of their energy and time criticizing Israel haven't said a single pro-Hamas thing. They've done analysis, the same analysis that like even someone like Asmongold is capable of doing, that even a worm will turn. But unfortunately, the evidence that people support Hamas is non-existent. But there is a lot of, again, money, viewers, security in saying, look at these fucking crazy people, they love Hamas. But when you actually have to provide evidence of this that doesn't say anything, that no one is actually saying anything about Hamas.
which, by the way, was founded by a former Israeli prison guard. And now, wouldn't you know it, he's a senior resident fellow for the Atlantic Council, a pro-US government and pro-Israel think tank. From them, he is undoubtedly earning at least a six-figure salary, on top of all the other income that he's generating from this from other sources. He gets to appear in the media and paint himself as some sort of representative of the Palestinian people. He gets to write op-eds, he's massively expanded his social media following. Basically, he's getting all of the material rewards that anyone could possibly hope for from selling their people out, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if the income that he's generating from this goes into the millions. His willingness to sell out his people has gotten him entry into the exclusive upper echelons of American society. There is a catch though, and it's the one that is what makes Al-Khatib the most pathetic of this bunch. You see, in spite of all his pro-Israel advocacy, Al-Khatib is still a Palestinian, and a Gazan Palestinian at that. So the Israelis for whom he sold his soul still treat him and his family like they're basically animals. When Al-Khatib was 11 years old, playing with his friends, 3 of them were killed in an Israeli double-tap airstrike, which is one airstrike that is then followed up by a second strike, which is intended to kill anyone who tries to help the victims of the first. In 2017, after he had already received US citizenship and was well established as a pro-Israel activist, he attempted to enter Israel to visit family who lived there, but was refused entry solely on the basis that he is Palestinian. In October 2023, his own family home, which he grew up in, was precisely and deliberately targeted in an Israeli airstrike with bombs likely provided by the same US government who he has devoted his life to, with no advance warning given to the inhabitants. 30 of his immediate and extended family members were...
Chatter says, how do you live through all of this and still turn on your own people? I guess he sleeps on his bags of money that he gets from shitting on Palestinians.
...were inside. A number of them were killed, including numerous children. Later, after they were evacuated, the survivors among his family were struck again. This time, 31 of them were killed, all at once. You might think that having been a victim of such barbarity, such unimaginable trauma at the hands of the Israelis, would help Al-Khatib to see the error of his ways. But you'd be very, very wrong. His reaction to this was to write a flurry of op-eds, for which he was undoubtedly paid handsomely, that rationalized the murder of his family with the notion that the Israeli people are merely lashing out due to trauma, and that coexistence with those who are currently blowing countless families, including his own, to smithereens is the only way forward. The true party to blame for all of this, according to Al-Khatib, is always Hamas or some other Palestinian group. He is careful not to blame Israel too directly, framing what they do.
This chatter responded, it's fair to have criticism on Israel, and it's also fair to do the same with Palestine. There's copious evidence online that people who side with Palestine are extremely far-leaning on the side of hating against Israel and taking accountability. Hamas are clearly a problem here as well, and streamers like Asmongold do not support either side. At the end of the day, Hamas are terrorists. This is what people like Asmongold fight for, to prevent people promoting them like Hassan. There's so much to unpack here. I'm just going to ignore your commentary, I think, at the moment about Asman and Hassan, because I don't want to get sidetracked here. And I'm going to try and make a simple analogy to branch off of. The problem with what you're suggesting is that you're doing the equivalent of, you know, that thing that happened in school where a bully would start bullying you, and maybe they shove you or maybe they punch you, and then you punch them back, and then you both get sent to detention for misbehaving. And you in that position will say, well, this is not fair. I would never even have engaged at all if I wasn't being actively attacked. Yeah, maybe, you know what, I decked him and he broke like 3 teeth and that was too far of a response. But I have no interest in behaving this way in the first place. It's not my fault that they literally started this altercation. And do you remember the frustration you would feel when the principal or your teacher would say, I'm disappointed in both of you. And you're like, wait, what the fuck? What do you mean both of us? This is not a both sides thing. Yeah, I went too far in my response. That's true. But this is not a both sides situation. What the fuck? That's sort of what you're doing here. Israel has all of the power in this situation. They have all of the power to provide food, to provide water, to provide electricity, to provide building materials, to provide any type of aid at all, medical supplies. They also have as much weaponry as they would like from the U.S., as much U.S. aid as they want in any other capacity. I mean, we subsidize their public healthcare system, even though we as Americans don't have a public healthcare system, and instead we pay thousands of dollars just to like get one checkup done. Neither here nor there. That's sort of a separate point. But to both sides, a situation where one party has significantly more financial aid, has significantly more power over the other party, is not only is it cruel, but it's also inaccurate. It's not a situation where you can both sides this. You can say, I don't condone Hamas's targeting of civilians, their killing of civilians, their rape, any of these other things. Of course, I can't condone any of these things. But at the end of the day, Israel is the reason that the genocide is continuing to occur. Israel has been killing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians for ages before Hamas. And I'm going to suggest to you the same thing that I've suggested to other people. If you believe that Hamas is the root of all evil here, I highly recommend looking into some of the stuff that Israeli officials have said about Palestinians. And I highly recommend looking into some of the documentaries put together about these settlements in the West Bank where there is no Hamas. There is no Hamas leadership. Nobody voted Hamas into power in the West Bank, and Palestinians are still treated like second-class citizens. Israel has, since its inception, killed and oppressed and subjugated and occupied Palestinians and Palestinian land. And again, if you think that this is a Hamas-Israel situation, I highly implore you to look into the West Bank and to see the treatment of Palestinians that were unlucky enough to be born right where settlements were created. Like, if you are interested in genuine conversation,
كيف الحياة هون يعني شفتك هلا عم بتمر في حاجز
صعب عندنا هون كثير.
Okay, I'll read out the captions for you guys.
كيف الحياة هون يعني شفتك هلا عم
What's life like here for you? I saw you just pass through a checkpoint.
صعب عندنا هون كثير.
You can see for yourself, it's really hard here.
Who has lived in this home his whole life. In the 1980s, Israel set up this checkpoint in front of his house. Fadil now has to check in every time he leaves or enters his own home.
How do they make life difficult for you? I mean, as you can see, they don't even let our relatives visit our house. My daughter's married, so they let her come over, but her husband isn't allowed. And when you have to pass, what do you need to show the soldier? My name and my ID number. And you can walk down here? No. Just here.
Wow.
We're not allowed to go there.
Fadil isn't alone.
And then she talks further about how all of these streets are segregated and all this other stuff. Like, this is not Hamas-controlled territory. West Bank is all the way over here, man. Gaza Strip is all the way over here. There's no Hamas governance in the West Bank. And the West Bank is broken up into a bunch of settlements where people are treated like second-class citizens. Can you genuinely just, like, really try and picture it yourself? You live in a house that you've lived in your entire life. Maybe your parents lived in that house and they gave it to you. Maybe their parents lived in that house, etc. And then the IDF rolls around and says, yeah, well, sorry, I know that there's no Hamas organizations here and there's no Hamas governance here, but we're building a checkpoint right in front of your door and you have to show us your papers every time you want to go outside and anytime you want to enter. And sometimes if you want like your daughter's family member or husband to enter, we won't allow it. Your friends, we won't allow them to come over. No, we have full control over that. And this is one story. This is one story. Again, I do implore you to look at like Louis Theroux's documentary as well on this. It really informs you on the type of people that enter these settlements and the Americans and the Europeans with Jewish heritage that come and take these people's homes. Also in the West Bank, Palestinian woman cries and screams everything I've worked for and suffered for as she evacuates her 3-story home in the village of Kafir el-Dik, Selfit in the West Bank after Israeli authorities warned they were coming to demolish it. In the background stands the illegal Israeli settlement of Ali Zahav, expanding without consequence while Palestinian homes are reduced to rubble. This wave of demolition orders across the West Bank is the direct implementation of a policy pushed by Israel's finance minister, convicted terrorist Bezalel Smotrich, who has openly vowed to demolish more than Palestinians build. Just, I really do, and I mean this genuinely, like really close your eyes if you have to. Imagine this is your mom. Imagine this is your mother. To pretend like this is an Israel versus Hamas and this is a fair fight between these two parties and that you can both sides this or that you can take the enlightened centrist position is a very privileged stance to hold. It's very easy to say, well, I condemn both sides. It's very hard to actually draw a line in the sand and say, wait, I do condemn all of the vicious actions and all the terrorist actions that Hamas has exhibited and engaged in. But this is not a fair fight. This is Israel's action towards Palestinians who are not terrorists. This is Israel's actions towards Palestinians who are in the West Bank, who have nothing to do with Hamas, who did not vote Hamas into power, who have absolutely done nothing wrong, and they're being evacuated. Why? Because that's where the settlement is going to be built. And because of videos like these, because of the documentaries we have, because of every single bit of footage from Abby Martin, from Louis Theroux, from countless others, I cannot, within like good conscience, pretend like this is a war and not call it what it actually is, which is ethnic cleansing and a genocide and heinous actions by the state of Israel in an attempt to land grab this entire territory. And it is cruel and needlessly pedantic to pretend like these two are the same thing. That's fair. You don't condone them, but people like Hassan don't help people like you or in chat because he wouldn't even admit that it ever happened. Huh? Hassan has admitted that violent acts occurred on October 7th. We all saw the footage. Hassan's crime is saying that the UN reported that there was no mass systemic rape. Not that there was no rape, that there was no mass systemic rape. His crime is saying that, wait, I'm not going to immediately believe Joe Biden when he gets on air and says that there's countless beheaded babies. Didn't he deny it multiple times when debating Ethan? No. No, he absolutely did not. But I mean, listen, man, you can believe what you want to believe. I'm just telling you what this perspective looks like if you're interested in a genuine attempt to understand why people have these disagreements. It's sad and it's unfortunate that taking the stance that I've taken, that other people have taken, immediately gets you labeled as an anti-Semite, gets you labeled as being pro-rape, despite the fact that I've explicitly said, I mean, this is just like basic statistic anomalies. It is a statistic anomaly for no rape to have occurred on October 7th. It would be a statistic anomaly that a paramilitary group would enter a territory having built up prejudice against these people over ages, and that there would be no sexual violence. It would be again, a statistic anomaly. Americans have committed sexual violence. Americans under threat of being dishonorably discharged have committed sexual violence against basically every single country that Americans have been stationed. Sexual violence against women in these countries has existed. That is very different from sexual violence being used as a tool systemically against another party, which the UN reported. Unless you think that the UN is controlled by Hamas, the UN reported that there in fact was no evidence to suggest mass systemic rape. It's a very serious accusation. It's not the same as saying rapes occurred. It's a very serious accusation against that. And if you're trying to prove that mass systemic rape happened, that investigation has to be very thorough. You have to have countless testimonies. You have to have, it's a higher bar for proving something like that. Proving that rapes happened, that's like, I don't even need the proof because I already know that happened, because that happens anytime there's any military or paramilitary operation in any combatant territory, enemy territory, etc. But again, these words are twisted because, and you can't really see it when you're too far out, but also too far in. Ethan Klein has like a personal vendetta because he feels like he's being wronged, which is why he's attempting to spin Hassan as an anti-Semite, which is why he got me banned for a month for a tier list and insisted that we were in fact not talking about Sabra hummus, we were talking about Jews, which is like absurd. Levels of absurd I didn't think were possible. You're nicer than me? No, it's not that I'm nicer. It's that when a chatter comes in and they're like, you love rape and you hate Jews, it's like, well, I'm just going to ban you because you're like, you're too far gone. You're fried past the point where I can save you. If a chatter comes in and they say something like this, it's like, okay, you're willing to have a conversation. If you're willing to, I'm down. Because the crazy thing, by the way, about like the Hamas like approval rates, like one example of one poll that often gets misconstrued. This is peak manufactured consent. There's this poll that was making the rounds a year or two ago about how Palestinians love Hamas. And when you ask them if they like Hamas or not, it's like 80% of Gazans say they love Hamas. And then in that same poll, if you actually go to the source of that poll and you scroll down and you say, have you seen the atrocities or videos of October 7th? The vast majority say no. When you offer to show Gazans these videos and then ask them afterward, do you still support Hamas? The approval rate drops like less than half. After Gazans who literally haven't had power, electricity, water, food, medicine, homes, hospitals. They couldn't have seen this footage if they wanted to see it because there was a telecommunications blackout during October 7th and the months and weeks and potentially years in some areas in Gaza. When you show these people the footage and you show them here's the atrocities that occurred on October 7th, Gazans overwhelmingly look at that and say, okay, I don't support Hamas anymore. I haven't seen any of this stuff. My understanding was that they didn't commit atrocities against civilians. But if CNN or MSNBC or Fox News actually reported fairly, people might have a genuinely nuanced perspective and recognize that the people in Gaza are not bloodthirsty freaks, that they're just human beings. Oh God, back to this guy. I'm a spy, I'm a Zionist, back to this guy. Fuck, dude.
Think much of it at the time, and I was like, okay, whatever, that's one person. And I continued to seek to do this pragmatic approach of saying, look, Hamas is like bad, like Hamas is.
I'm trying, real Merc. Reason why the Israelis like Ethan and Ela spread false rape hoaxes is to cover up the Israeli government's mass rapes. It's intentional Hezbollah. I mean, yeah. The clip of Ethan refusing to believe that Israelis have, and IDF members in Israeli prisons have committed sexual violence and rapes, mass systemic rape, is actually insane. He's like, what org is this? CARE? I don't know what this org is. It's like, I don't believe this. And then he has the audacity to say other people don't believe rapes. It's so obscene.
It's terrible. And I would get some funny looks, but for the most part, people didn't really give me a hard time or push back. But what I would say is that since October 7th,
I don't know.
There's been a complete shift, man.
Right.
And I have.
Can we get a $4,200 apartment tour? No.
I have a couple of theories to that. I think one of them is that, I mean, it's been like, what, almost 10 years from October 7th since the last major war. And like, that's enough time for enough of the younger generations of Arab Americans, Palestinian Americans, the pro-Palestine, the Muslim Americans, the pro-Palestine movement writ large. So you have a new kind of wave of younger generations. But the other theory is that I actually think because of the success, I mean, and I'm putting that in quotes, success, it was horrible, it was a disaster, but the initial success of the attack of October 7th, I genuinely think that some people were like, oh, well, maybe armed resistance isn't so bad. Maybe it can work against a much more powerful adversary like Israel. Little did they know that like within 8 hours, like the Israelis were starting to push back and then the bombardment began. So like it was a complete failure. And then number three, and this is where I get in the most trouble because people start thinking that I'm somehow this like far right crazy. Like I'm not far right. I'm not far left. Like I'm a middle of the road. And me personally, I'll be honest with you, I'm a Democrat. I'm a registered Democrat. So, but nevertheless, I actually think the pro-Palestine community and movement neatly plugged into a lot of the insanity of some of the extreme woke left. And I'm not saying woke left. I'm not saying that I'm coming from a like necessarily a MAGA perspective. I'm just saying that the broader environment, the 10 years since, the 2014 big war in Gaza versus 2023, almost 10 years later, things in the Western world and particularly in the United States are different, such that, like we don't have critical race theory in Palestine. We have now critical Palestine theory. And that is the Palestinians have no agency. There's no accountability. What they did on October 7th was an inevitability. And that's why I call that the inevitability fraud. The October 7th was an inevitability
Free Palestine.
when it wasn't. And so that's where
I like how they bring on
is a brain disease.
I like how they bring on this guy that says October 7th was not an inevitability. Actually, they could have just not done any violence. But Israel's response always has to be inevitable. Like, fucking pull up the clip of Ethan Klein saying, Israel's response to October 7th was inevitable.
I was really surprised that on day 2 or 3, there were these mass protests.
Right.
Effectively celebrating it, and at the same time calling it a genocide.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And so, You know, what strikes me is the difference between what appears to be the difference between what the people in Gaza actually want and advocate for, and then what Western leftists are being like, actually, no, you guys need to fight till you're all dead. Like, it's just, it strikes me as so deeply ironic. And like you said, there's a bigotry of low expectation.
Which, like, by the way, we hallucinated this. Nobody at any point said, you have to keep fighting until you're dead. That was a hallucinated comment.
Where it's like, of course these people are going to act like barbarians. Of course they're going to want to be violent. Of course they're going to be like this. It's like, no, that doesn't, it doesn't, it's like, how little do you think of them that you think that they have to act out in this way? Like, it's one thing to say, I understand why they're doing it. I understand the mentality of how they got there and how they got radicalized. But this presumption that, like, of course, it's like you were saying, the inevitability of fraud, it's that. Being like, of course they're going to have to, like, go slaughter a bunch of civilians. What do you expect? And it's like, that can't be true.
Precisely that, brother. And I mean, I was on a YouTube show with a famous, European, let's not mention names. I don't like to mention names, but I was a famous economist. And he's like, he knows best because those Europeans, they're going to tell me as a Gazan what time it is. And he was like, well, of course the Palestinians in Gaza are going to act, his words verbatim, this is a quote, of course the Gazans are going to act like animals.
Yeah, he said that.
Yes, on live YouTube show. Of course they're going to act like animals on October 7th and like total barbarians because Israel made them into animals and barbarians. Israel made them into animals. I was like, okay, we need a little bit of a timeout, sir. First of all, that is incredibly racist. And then he got all worked up like, no, I'm not racist. The Israelis are the worst creatures and I was like, whoa. Excuse me, sir. First of all, the decision to launch October 7th was a decision. It was a choice. It was not an inevitability. It didn't have to happen. All of these Western, experts in academia make it seem like Gaza was starving, that Gazans were like a North Korea-style famine in '94, crawling on the floor looking for crumbs of food, when in fact, this was a decision by Sinwar and Dave, two psychopaths underground, who not only didn't consult the rest.
We're going to deny all of the footage that we have pre-October 7th of Israel committing atrocities against Gazans. We're just going to ignore that. Just going to ignore everything pre-October 7th. October 7th just happened magically because Muslims are just so evil. Do you think he seasons it or do you think he licks the boot raw? Oh, definitely raw. Dog poop and all. Just like deep throating it for sure.
Rest of Gaza. They didn't even consult the rest of Hamas and the rest of Iran and the axis of resistance, Iran and Hezbollah, who had nebulous ideas about this happening. But basically, he went into like total operational security mode and decided to do this on his own. My point is that this was a very narrow, specific operation against Saudi and Israeli normalization. This was a military coup within Hamas. Hamas's popularity was down in the toilet in Gaza before October 7th. So this was an attempt to rejuvenate the armed resistance narrative and fraud, but on behalf of which Hamas siphoned so many resources of the Palestinian people's resources. And again, I say this because
this chatter says, hi, I'm an anti-Zionist in Israel. A Palestinian professor was going to a museum in Tel Aviv and the security in the area took her to a military base and strip searched her. Country is sick and the society is sick. I mean, how do you, I don't understand how far gone you have to be, how much of your humanity you have to lose, that you start mocking and making fun of people who are losing their children. Like the TikToks, I want to throw up when I see the TikToks of Israelis pretending to mourn their children. They put on a hijab and then they black out some of their teeth and do some fake blood and whatever. Your actions prove that you are sick and mentally unwell, that you would laugh at other people's suffering in the most disgusting, vile manner. And maybe this is the wrong time to show this. I don't think that there's necessarily a right time to show this, but I saw this on my feed and I just started bawling. It says it's captioned with a 16-year-old Palestinian teenager's dream of becoming a professional gymnast was shattered when an Israeli airstrike resulted in the amputation of both his legs and 4 fingers. This was me before the war, and this is my condition after the injury. You'll have to excuse me. I don't know gymnastics. I'm a gamer, okay? I said home. But he's doing not cartwheels, flips. someone who is more physically able than I am or watches more gymnasts handsprings. He did like 5 back-to-back back handsprings. And he says, I'm Ahmed Al-Ghalban, a 16-year-old, I think he said, in Gaza. I live in Beit Lahia in the El Shema region, area. Since my brother and I were 7 years old, we've been dreaming of becoming gymnastics coaches and to become top-level gymnasts. So my brother encouraged me and told me there was a gymnastics club. Let's go sign up. And we were excited and we went and registered. And in the first month, the second we started getting used to gymnastics, learning how to flip and how to train, the coach showed us everything. Then when we got older and became advanced gymnasts, my brother Muhammad and I were taken by our coaches to major performances, big festivals, international events, even with foreigners and Christian organizers to places like Gaza and Khan Yunis. The coaches really liked us because we had high morale and we were skilled at gymnastics. And also because we're twins. On March 22nd, we received an evacuation order from the occupation forces to leave the area that we were in. So my brother, Muhammad, my uncle, my cousin, and I went to move our things. Suddenly on the road, Israelis fired a direct shell at us. My brother, my uncle, and my cousin were killed, and as you can see, I lost both of my legs. And 4 fingers on my left hand. From the moment the shell hit, I sat like this and I started reciting the Quran. I looked over at my brother Muhammad and I saw him in his final breaths. And he was reciting the Quran and saying, "Praise be to God." And the boys came over and they took us in a rickshaw from the site of the injury to the hospital and to intensive care, all while we were reciting the Quran. My family hid the news of my brother dying because they couldn't bring themselves to tell me. Sorry, the messages were going really fast. My family hid the news of my brother Muhammad's killing from me for 15 days. They couldn't bring themselves to tell me because of how critical my condition was, and they didn't know how I would cope with it. During those 15 days, I kept asking my mom every day, "Where's Muhammad? How is he doing?" They would say, "Muhammad has his eyes closed. You've got your eyes open. You can pray for him and you can talk." And I told them, "Take me to him. I want to boost his spirits and see him and make sure that he's all right." And they would just say, "God willing, my dear, once things calm down and Muhammad gets better." My dream now is just for the war to end, for the border to open so I can travel abroad and get prosthetic limbs and return to Gaza, God willing. And God willing, I'll be able to walk again and I'll be able to go back to doing gymnastics and I'll be able to open a gymnastics club to teach young children and bring them joy. God willing. Before the injury, I was a gymnastics champion. My brother Muhammad and I used to go out every day to practice gymnastics somewhere by the sea. At the club, we'd always go to train, but because of the occupation, I lost my brother and I was deprived of my legs. You want people to see this? And you want them to say both sides, and you want them to say this is like all Hamas's fault, as if Israel doesn't have the power to stop this right now, as if they haven't had it from the very first day, as if they couldn't have engaged in a ceasefire deal to release the hostages immediately. No, you don't understand. It's all Hamas's fault, and we need to, as many kids like this need to suffer first. How dare people like us accurately call out the state that's actually doing this, the state that's actually allowing this to continue? Do you think these people decided? Do you think these people got to decide where they were born? How many? Like, tell me the number. Like, another 100,000 stories like this? 200? How many more, like, kids maimed is a good number for you so that the war can end, so we've successfully targeted enough Hamas members? And, like, I'm supposed to both sides when I see this fucking ghoulish piece of shit say every child, every baby in Gaza is an enemy? Like, are you fucking kidding me? These are the people in positions of power in Israel, and they're excited about it. They're saying we need to kill all of them. And you expect me to fucking both sides this shit? Like, it's just disgusting. And then, like, this fucker has the audacity to come on and then say, it's really all Hamas's fault. Hamas is the only reason any of this is happening, as if the occupation hasn't been nearly approaching a century. I meant to talk about, by the way, I totally forgot about this. I meant to talk about IDubbbz tweeting he wants that incel audience so bad because in a crazy spiral a day or two ago, Ethan went on his Instagram to write, Ian lost his virginity to Anissa and he had never had a girlfriend before or been with a woman before that. This is what he told me shortly before he started dating her. Which, like, first of all, I'm sorry, I don't believe you. Like, I just don't believe you. Like, this is, I'm a patriot. I'm fact-checking this. False. I refuse to believe this. I'm sorry. This is more projection. Second, even if it was true, who gives a fuck? And then he tried to defend it in the most, I don't know how else to explain this, IDF way. He was like, yeah, well, did you know that, that IDubbbz said that he laughed about the skulls? He was on Noah's stream and he was like, yeah, the skull is humorous. So I have to obviously, as always, in IDF fashion, kick it up a notch. Well, you guys killed 1,000 people. We'll kill 100,000 people. Here I am. I'm going to expose you for the virgin that you are. You've only been with one beautiful woman before. The appropriate response to someone laughing at you about skulls is sharing private information. That seems like an appropriate measured response. Sharing private information that you were given in confidence. These are the same level to you. Not laughing at him for his gold tooth. Not laughing at him for like having kind of a mega mind head. Not laughing at him for small feet. Like, not laughing at him for publicly available information. You want to laugh at him by providing information that no one else has, allegedly, because you're epically owning? Yeah, that seems like an appropriate response. Yeah, that seems appropriate. He criticized Hassan for having too much sex, and then he criticizes Ian for not having enough sex. I wonder what's an acceptable body count range is for sex god Ethan Klein. Oh, Hassan makes me so mad. He has so much sex. Ian, he doesn't have enough sex. This is so freakazoid behavior, dude. What the fuck? That's so bizarre. And yeah, he does want the incel audience back. Well, I think he's accidentally / intentionally harboring the incel audience.
I was on the inside until I found out he used to be a virgin.
I was on his side and then I was like, wait, there was a time when this guy didn't have sex? What the fuck? Ew! He used to be a virgin? Ew! What the fuck? Please comment, please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Please like the video. Times 100, please do that. It takes 2 seconds.